Jason Blackburn's head pounded as he regained consciousness. The first thing he noticed was the cold metal against his back. The air smelled different, metallic and sterile, nothing like Earth. He blinked up at a ceiling lined with glowing blue panels. Where was he? As he struggled to sit up, a figure entered his blurry field of vision. She was tall, her silver skin shimmering under the cold light. Aelira, he'd learned her name was, stood with a calm yet imperious air. Even though Jason couldn't understand a word she was saying, her intent was clear. He was no longer in control. Jason's heart raced. He reached for the translator implant in his neck. It was standard for deep space expeditions, but at the moment it wasn't picking up her words. He forced himself to speak slowly, clearly. Who are you? Why am I here? Aelira tilted her head, her violet eyes narrowing slightly. She gestured to a guard, a shorter alien with ridged, charcoal-colored skin. The guard handed her a small device, which she pressed to her wrist. Jason's translator crackled to life. You are on my vessel, Aelira said, her voice smooth and detached. I am Princess Aelira of Thalera. You are my prize. Prize? Jason repeated, his voice rising with disbelief. What are you talking about? Her expression didn't change. You were found in contested territory. By the laws of the Thalaran Protectorate, your ship and crew are considered forfeit. You alone survived. Therefore, you are mine. Jason felt his stomach drop. My crew, he began, but Aelira cut him off. They are no more, she said, her voice softening by the slightest degree. Their loss is regrettable. Jason clenched his fists. You're telling me you killed them? All of them? And now I'm just, what? Some kind of trophy for you. Her violet eyes locked onto his. You misunderstand, human. You are not a trophy. You are an opportunity. The guards flanked Jason, ready to step in at the slightest hint of resistance, but he didn't make a move. He was too stunned. He didn't trust her words, but he could see that Aelira was no ordinary captor. Her gaze wasn't one of triumph or mockery, it was searching, as if she were trying to figure something out. For the next several days, Jason's world shrank to the confines of the Thalaran vessel. He wasn't kept in a cell, not exactly. Aelira allowed him some degree of freedom, but he was always under watch. He quickly learned which areas of the ship were off-limits and which corridors the crew didn't want him wandering down. One of the guards, a gruff Thalaran named Korvek, became Jason's shadow. Korvek had the build of a boulder and the temper to match. He rarely spoke, but Jason managed to coax a few words out of him here and there. You must have done something pretty remarkable to end up here, Korvek said one day, his voice a low rumble. Aelira doesn't usually take prisoners. Jason snorted. Remarkable? I was just trying to keep my crew alive. That lot of good that did. Korvek gave a non-committal grunt as if to say, I've heard worse. Despite the tense situation, Jason wasn't completely alone. One of the ship's engineers, a wiry Thalaran named Telix, seemed oddly fascinated by him. Telix would stop by during meals, chatting in broken galactic common. His curiosity annoyed Jason at first, but it was better than silence. Your people, Telix said one evening, tapping on a holographic pad. You build such strange things. I looked at the logs from your ship. Compact, efficient, almost primitive. And yet, you survived where others did not. Jason shrugged. Humans are stubborn. We don't go down easy. Telix nodded as if this confirmed some theory of his. I want to know more. About Earth. About you. Jason was about to give a sarcastic reply when Aelira appeared. She walked with her usual calm authority, her silver hair catching the light. Telix immediately stood straighter, his demeanor shifting to one of strict formality. Jason didn't bother hiding his scowl. You're not here just to gawk at me, are you? Jason said. Aelira raised one elegant brow. No. I'm here because I believe you have answers. And you will give them to me. Answers to what? Jason snapped. You haven't asked me a damn thing that makes sense. Aelira stepped closer, her voice dropping to a quieter tone. You were found in a region of space where humans have no jurisdiction. Your ship's presence was unusual. I need to know why you were there, what you were searching for. Jason narrowed his eyes. I already told you, we were mapping a new jump route. Nothing more. And yet, Aelira said you survived an encounter that should have left no witnesses. That makes you valuable. Her words struck a nerve. Jason hadn't survived by choice. His crew had sacrificed themselves so he could send out a warning before their ship was attacked. He hated the idea that his survival made him valuable to anyone. You keep saying that, Jason said. That I'm valuable. But valuable to who? You? Your people. Aelira's expression softened, just barely. You misunderstand. I am not here to gloat. I need you to understand the stakes. The information you have could prevent a great deal of suffering. Jason wasn't sure if he believed her, but he knew one thing for certain: Aelira wasn't what he'd expected. She wasn't a ruthless conqueror or a heartless captor. There was something more complicated beneath the surface. Over time, their conversations grew less hostile. Aelira would visit him during meals, asking questions about Earth's history, its culture, its strange traditions. Jason found himself answering out of reflex, then out of curiosity. He wanted to see how she'd react to tales of humanity's triumphs and failures. "Your species," Aelira said one evening, "is unlike any we have encountered. You are both fragile and adaptable." "It is a paradox." Jason snorted. "That's humans for you. We don't make sense, even to ourselves." A hint of a smile played at the corners of her mouth. "No, you do not." As the days turned into weeks, Jason noticed subtle changes. The guards became less rigid around him. Telix started sharing his own stories of Thalaran engineering. Korvek even offered a gruff nod of acknowledgement one day. And Aelira, she began to open up. She spoke of her homeworld, of its crystal forests and towering spires. She shared fragments of her childhood, her training, her rise to power. Jason listened, surprised by how much he wanted to know more. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, Jason finally asked her the question that had been gnawing at him. "Why did you take me, really? Was it just because I was the last one alive?" Aelira was silent for a long moment. The stars stretched out before them, an endless expanse of light and shadow. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "No," she said. "It was because you fought to survive. And because I needed to understand why you would risk so much even when all hope seemed lost." Jason didn't know how to respond. Aelira wasn't just studying him, she was searching for something in him that she couldn't find in herself. In that moment, Jason realized their fates were more intertwined than he'd ever imagined. He wasn't just her prize. He was a piece of a puzzle that neither of them fully understood. And as much as he wanted to hate her for what had happened, he couldn't. Because beneath the layers of authority and tradition, Aelira was as lost as he was. And that made her human in a way he never expected. Jason Blackburn stood by the ship's observation window, staring out at the nebula that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The swirls of blue and gold light made Earth's skies feel small in comparison. As he leaned against the cool glass-like panel, he heard the sound of soft footfalls behind him. "You've been here for hours," Aelira said, her voice calm but questioning. "Surely the stars cannot hold your attention for so long." Jason didn't turn right away. "It's not just the stars," he said after a moment. "It's everything. The silence. The sheer size of it all. Back home, you can always hear something: wind, people, traffic. Out here, it's like nothing exists except the ship and the view." Aelira stepped closer, the silver of her skin catching the ambient light. "Do you find that comforting or unsettling?" "Both, I guess," Jason replied. Finally, he turned to look at her. "Back on Earth, I used to think I was ready for the unknown. You know, the great frontier. But out here," he shook his head. "Out here, I don't think anyone's ever really prepared." Aelira tilted her head slightly. "You're braver than most humans I've encountered." "Not sure about that," Jason said, a small, self-deprecating laugh escaping him. "It's not like I had a choice in the matter." The conversation was interrupted when the door to the observation deck slid open and another figure entered. Korvek, the Thalaran guard who had become something of a silent companion to Jason, nodded as he approached. "The reports are ready, Princess," he said, his deep voice carrying a note of deference. Aelira acknowledged him with a slight nod. "Good. Leave them in my quarters." Korvek hesitated, glancing at Jason. "Is it wise to allow him to roam so freely?" Aelira's gaze didn't waver. "He is under my protection. That is all you need to know." Korvek gave a curt bow and left without another word. Jason watched him go, then turned back to Aelira. "You know, for someone who keeps telling me I'm not a prisoner, it sure feels like I'm under house arrest." "You misunderstand," Aelira said, stepping closer. "Your presence here is not punishment. It's a unique opportunity." Jason folded his arms. "You keep saying that. Opportunity for what?" Aelira didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a slow, measured step forward, closing the distance between them. "You are unlike any human I've encountered. Most would have fought me, tried to escape. Yet you have remained curious, even willing to talk. That is rare." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound like I had much of a choice. What's the alternative? Sit in a corner and sulk?" A faint smile touched Aelira's lips. "Many would choose that path. You did not." Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What's the point, though? What am I supposed to do here? Tell you stories about Earth? Share what little I know about our technology? I'm just one guy from a busted ship. Not exactly prime material for your research or whatever it is you're doing." Aelira's expression softened and she took another step closer. You underestimate yourself. Your perspective is unique and valuable. Jason looked at her skeptically. Valuable how? Because it is honest, she said, her voice almost a whisper. In my position, honesty is a rare commodity. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's engines. Jason searched her face, trying to read the emotions behind her composed exterior. He thought he saw a flicker of something vulnerability, perhaps? It was hard to tell. Why are you doing this? He asked finally. Why do you care what I think? Aelira's gaze didn't waver. Because I believe understanding each other is the first step towards something greater. Jason felt a small knot form in his chest. He wasn't sure what to make of her words, but they felt genuine in a way he hadn't expected. Well, if you're looking for a cultural exchange, I'm not exactly an ambassador. Aelira's lips curved into a slight smile. Perhaps not, but you've managed to intrigue me nonetheless. Jason chuckled softly. I'll take that as a compliment, I guess. They stood there for a while, side by side, watching the nebula. Jason could feel the tension between them shift, becoming something less adversarial and more uncertain. Aelira wasn't just his captor anymore. She was someone he was beginning to understand. And, if he was honest with himself, someone he wanted to know more about. Eventually, he broke the silence. So, what happens now? Aelira glanced at him, her violet eyes glimmering faintly. That depends. On what? Jason asked. On what you're willing to share, she said. And on how far you're willing to trust me. Jason let out a slow breath. Trust, huh? That's a big ask. Aelira's expression softened again. I know. Jason turned back to the window, his reflection faintly visible against the backdrop of stars. Trust. It wasn't something he gave easily. But as he stood there, shoulder to shoulder with the alien princess who had taken him from everything he knew, he realized that maybe, just maybe, trust was something he could learn to give. Jason Blackburn stepped into the ship's engineering bay, his eyes scanning the massive, intricate machinery that powered Aelira's vessel. He had been given permission, tentative, begrudging permission, to move beyond his usual confines, provided that Telex and Korvek accompanied him. It was a rare break from the monotony of the past few weeks, and Jason wasn't about to waste it. This is where the magic happens, Telex said, grinning as he gestured toward the towering reactor at the center of the chamber. His violet eyes gleamed with pride. Well, not actual magic. Advanced molecular fusion. But close enough. Jason couldn't help but smirk. So you're the one who keeps this ship from falling apart, huh? Telex puffed out his chest. More or less. Korvek fixes what I can't. Korvek, who had been standing silently at the entrance, crossed his arms and gave a non-committal grunt. Don't break anything, human, he said, his deep voice resonating in the cavernous room. Relax, Jason replied. I'm just here to look. Aelira's voice cut through the conversation as she stepped into the bay. He's not here to cause trouble, Korvek. You can lower your guard. Korvek grunted again, clearly not convinced, but he said nothing further. Telex glanced at Aelira, then at Jason, and a sly grin spread across his face. You've been spending a lot of time with our esteemed princess, haven't you? Jason rolled his eyes. If by spending time you mean being dragged into philosophical debates about Earth's music and art, then yeah, sure. Aelira raised an elegant eyebrow. I wouldn't call it dragging. You seem to enjoy those debates. Jason shrugged. I don't mind talking about home. Better than sitting around doing nothing. Telex leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. Just so you know, she doesn't usually spend this much time with outsiders. Telex, Aelira said, her tone sharp. That's enough. Telex gave a sheepish grin. Sorry, princess. I'll keep my observations to myself. Jason tried not to laugh. So, what exactly are you working on down here? Telex eagerly grabbed a hollow display from the workbench. Right now, I'm fine-tuning the gravitic stabilizers. They've been acting up lately, and if they fail, we'll be spinning like a top. Jason winced. Yeah, let's avoid that. Aelira watched the exchange silently, her violet eyes shifting between Jason and Telex. Finally, she spoke. You understand more about this technology than I expected. Jason nodded toward the reactor. My ship didn't have anything this advanced, but I know my way around engines and propulsion systems. Had to, given how often things broke down. Telex laughed. Sounds like you and I aren't so different. Don't get ahead of yourself, Korvac muttered from the corner. He's still human. Jason shot Korvac a look. And yet I'm still standing here, aren't I? Korvac's lips twitched as if he were trying not to smile. Barely. Aelira stepped closer to Jason, her voice low so that only he could hear. It's rare for Korvac to tolerate anyone, let alone a human. I'll take that as a compliment, Jason said. He hesitated before adding, you don't have to keep defending me, you know. Aelira tilted her head slightly, studying him. Why would I stop? Because I'm not your responsibility, Jason replied. I'm just a guy who got unlucky. Or perhaps, she said, her tone softer, you're someone who was meant to be here. Jason wasn't sure how to respond to that. He looked back at the reactor, trying to distract himself. So, how long until you get these stabilizers fixed? Telex grinned. If you're offering to help, I could use an extra set of hands. Jason held up his hands. I didn't say that. Too late, Telex said, grabbing a toolkit and shoving it into Jason's arms. Come on. I'll show you what needs to be done. Jason glanced at Aelira, who nodded her approval. Fine, he said, following Telex to one of the stabilizer panels. But if something blows up, it's on you. It won't blow up, Telex said confidently. Probably. Korvac muttered something under his breath and Jason could have sworn he heard the word foolish. But he let it slide and focused on the task at hand. As Telex explained the finer points of Thalaran engineering, Jason found himself getting absorbed in the work. It was almost like being back on his own ship, troubleshooting problems and making things run smoothly. He liked the sense of purpose it gave him, even if only for a little while. So, Telex said after a while, what's Earth really like? I've only heard rumors. Jason leaned back from the panel he was working on, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. Depends on where you go. There's a lot of diversity. Different climates, different cultures. It's messy, but it's home. Messy sounds interesting, Telex said. Here, everything is so controlled. Jason glanced at Aelira, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Controlled isn't always a bad thing. But sometimes, yeah, it's nice to have a little chaos. Telex chuckled. I think I'd like your planet, assuming I could breathe the air. You'd get used to it, Jason said with a grin. Aelira stepped forward, breaking the light-hearted moment. Enough talk. How is the repair progressing? Almost done, Telex said, gesturing for Jason to hand him a tool. Just need to recalibrate this circuit. Jason watched as Telex finished the adjustment, then tested the stabilizer. The panel hummed to life, its readings glowing green on the hollow display. There we go, Telex said, clearly pleased. No more wobbly ship. Jason gave a mock salute. Glad I could help. Telex clapped him on the shoulder. You're not so bad, human. Jason laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Alira's voice broke through the camaraderie. Let's move on. There's more to see. As they made their way out of the engineering bay, Jason found himself walking alongside Aelira. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then, in a quiet voice, Aelira said, You seem more at ease today. Jason glanced at her. I guess working on something familiar helped. Back home, fixing things was kinda my job. Feels good to use those skills again. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. You adapt quickly. That is a valuable trait. Thanks, I guess, Jason said. But honestly, I'm just trying to make the best of the situation. Aelira turned her head slightly, her silver hair catching the light. You've done more than that. You've surprised me. Jason didn't know how to respond to that. He looked straight ahead, his thoughts swirling. Aelira was still an enigma to him, but she was no longer just his captor. She was becoming someone he could talk to, someone he could trust, at least a little. As they walked down the corridor, Jason couldn't help but feel that things were and as composed as ever, though he'd come to recognize the subtle shifts in her demeanor. She had requested his presence for reasons that were still unclear, but he wasn't about to argue. At least it beat sitting alone in his quarters. You could have just sent a message, he said, his voice light. Didn't need a personal escort? Aelira glanced at him, one eyebrow arched. Perhaps I enjoy your company. Jason smirked. And here I thought you kept me around for my charm. A faint, rare smile tugged at the corners of her lips. You overestimate yourself. Telex, who was standing nearby and fiddling with a handheld diagnostic tool, chimed in. Careful, Jason. If she compliments you too much, Korvac might get jealous. Korvac, stationed by the entrance, shot Telix a glare. Focus on your work. Relax, Telix said, rolling his eyes. You're always so serious. Somebody has to be, Korvac replied, his tone as gruff as ever. Jason shook his head. You two ever take a break from bickering? Telix grinned. Not when it's this fun. Aelira raised a hand and the room fell quiet. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the central console. Status report. One of the technicians, a Thalaran with intricate patterns etched into her silver skin, nodded and began typing on the console. We've stabilized the relay and boosted the range. Communications should now be operational at 70% capacity. Good, Aelira said, her tone calm but firm. Continue monitoring. I want updates every hour. Jason watched her with a mix of curiosity and admiration. Even in the mundane details of running the ship, she carried herself with a quiet authority. He had to admit there was something impressive about how she handled everything, even if she still confused him half the time. As Aelira turned back toward him, she caught him staring. Is something on your mind? Jason hesitated, then shrugged. Just wondering how you keep all this together. It's my responsibility, she said simply. I do what must be done. You make it sound easy, Jason replied. It's not, she said, her gaze steady. But it's necessary. Jason nodded slowly. I get that. Telix interrupted the moment, waving a small tool in his hand. So, what's next? More diagnostics? Or can I finally take a break and grab something to eat? Aelira gave him a pointed look. If you're finished here, you may go. Telix grinned. Finally. Korvac, you coming? Korvac shook his head. I'll stay. Telix shrugged. Suit yourself. He turned to Jason. How about you? Jason glanced at Aelira, then back at Telix. I'll catch up later. With a nod, Telix left, leaving Jason, Aelira, and Korvac alone in the room. The silence stretched for a moment before Aelira spoke again. Walk with me. Jason followed her out into the corridor, Korvac trailing a few steps behind. The three of them walked in silence at first, the hum of the ship's systems their only companion. After a few minutes, Aelira glanced over her shoulder and spoke to Korvac. I'd like to speak with Jason alone. Wait here. Korvac frowned but complied, stopping at the next junction. Aelira led Jason down a quieter passage, her steps measured and deliberate. Finally, she stopped in front of a large window overlooking the ship's vast engine array. You've adjusted well, she said without preamble. You found a place here, even if it's temporary. Jason leaned against the window's edge, looking out at the labyrinth of glowing conduits and humming machinery. It's better than I expected. I mean, the company's not bad. Korvac could lighten up a bit, but Telix keeps things interesting. Aelira nodded, her gaze distant. And you? Do you find this bearable? Jason thought for a moment. It's not home, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I guess it's starting to feel less like being trapped and more like, he stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. Aelira's eyes met his. More like what? Like I'm part of something, Jason said quietly. Even if I don't fully understand it. She regarded him for a moment, then said, that's progress. Progress, Jason repeated with a wry smile. That's one way to put it. Aelira stepped closer, her voice softer now. You've changed since we first brought you aboard. You've adapted, learned, and proven yourself. That's not something everyone can do. Jason tilted his head. What are you getting at? She hesitated, then said, I've come to respect you, Jason. And I believe you can be more than just a passenger on this journey. Jason blinked. You mean I can, what? Join the crew? Not exactly, Aelira said. But I believe you have a role to play. One that goes beyond what either of us expected. He frowned, trying to read her expression. You've got a habit of speaking in riddles, you know that? A faint smile crossed her lips. Perhaps. But you'll come to understand. Jason shook his head, not sure what to make of her cryptic words. You really think I can make a difference here? Aelira's gaze held his. Yes. They stood there in silence, the hum of the engines filling the gap between their words. Jason didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a direction, however uncertain it might be. The ship's control room was quiet but tense. Jason Blackburn stood to one side, watching as Aelira and her officers examined the flickering holographic map that filled the central console. Telix and Korvac were present too, the latter standing like a silent sentry near the door while Telix fiddled with a diagnostic scanner, muttering to himself. Is this what you've been worried about? Jason asked, breaking the silence. Aelira didn't look away from the display. The anomaly is interfering with our navigation systems. It's not natural and it's not random. Jason frowned. Then what is it? We don't know yet, Aelira admitted, her tone calm but sharp. but it appeared after our encounter with the relay station. Whatever it is, it's not coincidence. Telex leaned over the console, tapping at the interface. We've been running scans for hours. The energy signatures are strange. I've never seen anything like it. Definitely not Thalaran. Jason stepped closer, peering at the holographic map. And not human either, if that's what you're thinking. Nothing from Earth's colonies or outposts would look like this. Korvac finally spoke, his voice low. What are you suggesting, human? Jason shrugged. Just saying it might be something or someone neither of us has dealt with before. Aelira turned her head slightly, her violet eyes meeting Jason's. An outside influence? Maybe, Jason said. Maybe it's worth considering. Telex shook his head. We need more data. We can't just guess. Jason held up his hands. I'm not saying we charge in blind. I'm saying we keep an open mind. Korvac crossed his arms. An open mind won't keep us from being destroyed if this thing turns out to be hostile. No, but it might help us understand what we're dealing with, Jason countered. Isn't that the whole point of exploring? Finding the unknown and learning how to deal with it. Aelira's lips curved into a faint smile. Your perspective is refreshing, Jason. But Korvac is right. Caution must guide our actions. I'm not saying we throw caution out the airlock, Jason said, meeting her gaze. But if we sit around waiting for the perfect answer, we might miss our chance to figure this out. Telex sighed, stepping back from the console. The human has a point. If we keep running the same scans, we're just going to get the same results. Korvac grunted. Fine. What do you suggest we do, human? Jason paused, looking at the display again. What about a closer look? A recon team. Small, quick, in and out. Korvac's expression darkened. That's reckless. It's practical, Jason argued. We're not going to learn anything new sitting here. But if we send a small team to gather data directly. Aelira raised her hand, silencing both men. Enough. Jason's suggestion has merit, but it also carries risk. If we proceed, we do so carefully. Telex glanced at Jason. You realize if this goes sideways, you're going to be the one everyone blames, right? Jason gave a wry smile. Story of my life. Aelira gestured to the console. Telex, prepare a shuttle. Korvac, you'll lead the team. Jason, you will accompany them. Me? Jason said, caught off guard. You want me to go? You suggested it, Aelira said simply. It's only fair that you take part. Jason looked from her to Korvac, whose expression was unreadable. All right, he said. I'll go. Telex grinned. Finally, some action. Just don't break anything down there. Not planning to, Jason said. Aelira stepped closer, lowering her voice. Be careful, Jason. He nodded. I will. The shuttle ride was tense but uneventful. Jason sat across from Korvac, who maintained his stoic silence throughout the trip. Two other Thalaran crew members were seated nearby, their faces grim. Jason tried to lighten the mood. Anyone here been to a mystery anomaly before? He asked, earning a few blank stares. Telex, piloting the shuttle, chuckled over the intercom. You really know how to break the ice, huh? Just trying to keep things from feeling like a funeral, Jason replied. Korvac's voice cut through the quiet. Focus. We're almost there. Jason rolled his eyes but kept his mouth shut. As the shuttle approached the anomaly's coordinates, the energy readings on the console began to spike. Telex? Jason said, leaning toward the cockpit. What are we looking at? Telex's voice was tight. The signatures are all over the place. It's like it's not stable. The closer we get, the more it shifts. Korvac stood and moved toward the viewport. Bring us in slow. We need a better reading. Jason stood too, looking out at the swirling, faintly glowing mass ahead. That doesn't look natural at all. No, Korvac said quietly. It does not. The shuttle came to a halt a safe distance from the anomaly. Telex began running scans while the rest of the team prepared to launch a small probe. Jason found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with Korvac, both of them staring at the strange phenomenon. Any ideas? Jason asked. Korvac shook his head. Not yet. Reassuring, Jason said dryly. Korvac shot him a look. You wanted to be here, human. True, Jason admitted. Guess I can't complain. Telex's voice came through the comms. Launching the probe now. They watched as the small, spherical device flew into the anomaly's edge. The data started streaming back almost immediately, but the readings were erratic. What the hell is that? Jason muttered. Stay focused, Korvac said. Telex, can you stabilize the feed? Trying, Telex replied. It's hold on, something's happening. The anomaly's glow intensified and the shuttle's console began to blink with warnings. The probe's signal cut out abruptly and the anomaly seemed to ripple. Telex? Korvac said sharply. I don't know what's going on. Telex replied, frantically working the controls. It's reacting to the probe. I'm pulling us back. The shuttle's engines roared to life and the craft began to retreat. Jason gripped a support rail, his heart racing. What's it doing? Shifting, Korvac said grimly. Get us out of here, Telex. As the shuttle put more distance between itself and the anomaly, the ripple effect subsided. Telex slowed their retreat once the readings stabilized. We're clear, Telex said. For now. Korvac turned to Jason. This is what you wanted, human. An answer. Jason shook his head. That wasn't an answer. That was something else. Korvac nodded. Something we'll have to report back to the princess. Jason sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. She's not going to be happy. Probably not, Telex said from the cockpit. But at least we know more than we did before. Not much more, Jason said. Korvac placed a hand on Jason's shoulder, surprising him. You handled yourself well. Perhaps you have more to offer than I thought. Jason blinked. Was that a compliment? Don't let it go to your head, Korvac said, moving back toward his seat. Telex laughed. Mark this day in history, Korvac said something nice. Jason couldn't help but chuckle despite the tension still lingering in his chest. Guess there's a first time for everything. As the shuttle returned to the main vessel, Jason thought about the anomaly and what it might mean. They hadn't found answers, but they had found something that would change the course of their journey. Whatever lay ahead, he knew it wouldn't be simple. But at least he wasn't facing it alone.